There's too much news programs on at 5.
Live at 5. Nobody would be watching the news if we were on at 5. I can tell you. we are the news.
We've gone live now. Welcome along. You just walked in on us having a wee debate as to whether we should do this at 5 o'clock, purely for the fact that Russell wants to start off with we're live at 5. So if you think it's a good idea, let us know. Good evening, Jill. Welcome to Inverurie Whisky Shop's Blether with great guests. Normally we talk whiskey. I've no doubt that whiskey might pop up tonight. Now and then, but we're kind of focused on rum tonight. We've got Outlaw Rum, which is kind of up our next neck of the woods, up in Casks. So for those who don't know, who aren't familiar with the Aberdeenshire, we're talking kind of bang in the middle between Dufton and Huntly, I think is the best way to describe it. If you're taking the back road, not even the back road now, is it? Be the main route the Cabrick. Yeah. So we're delighted to have Jim and Vic joining us from Outlaw Rum, who will be talking a little bit about the rum and their kind of backgrounds. You'll probably recognise Vic. I think he's one of the legends of the whiskey industry. So we'll try not to get caught up too much on Vic. We'll try and focus on Jim, the unknown quantity, a relative unknown quantity of the guests tonight. But no doubt Vic's got some conversations he wants to have, and we'll hear some stories. What's in your glass, Russell?
Well, I'm going to go. I'm going to pour myself an Outlaw. So I've got the Outlaw cask that I picked up when I met Jim at the farmers market, the Hearst in Huntly, a little while ago. So I'm going to start off with one of these because it's just fantastic, and I've got a little wee Kilhoman behind me as well to have as well, which I think just might complement it. You never know.
We'll maybe find out what the Outlaw cask was later on.
Maybe.
Well, I am on the core Outlaw Rum tonight. So batch 1. So we'll do a quick introduction with Jim on what the Outlaw Rum is all about. Essentially, rum aged in whiskey cask, but it's a lot more complex than that, I'm sure. But I'm just thinking when you're mentioning they bought the bottle at the Hearst, what the YouTube subtitles will be popping up.
The Hearst, the Harvest Festival, yes.
Yeah, the Harvest Festival, guys. For those who are but without waiting too long, we'll get the guys on. So we'll welcome Jim and Vic. There we go.
Good evening.
Good evening, guys. How are you?
Hi, guys.
Good, thanks. Yeah, doing well, thank you.
Is it a silly question to ask what's in your glass?
Hey.
I thought I'd better, seeing as Jim was on, I thought I'd better have an Outlaw as well.
Cheers, guys. Good health.
I've not got your Isla one, Russell. We'll maybe talk about it later, but I'm on flagship. Yeah, so you on Isla, are you, Jim?
I've told one of each because it would be rude not to.
Well,
we're on two each, which is good. So obviously, I don't know. The eagle-eyed guys would have seen the picture in the background. You can't see it now, but when it was just me and Russell, you'd have seen that was the bourbon cask, which was the latest release. So tell us a little bit about Outlaw. What's the theory and the kind of premise behind it?
Well, I'm still mostly employed through the oil field. So we, as a family, got a secondment and spent 4.5 years in Trinidad. And whilst we were there, you could get some half-decent rum on the shelves, but it was, and I've had it explained to me that it was very similar, or it seems very similar to how it might have been in the, say, 90s or early 2000s, where if you knew who to talk to in the single malt industry, you could get something really special, but it wasn't something you're going to pick up from Tesco's or Lidl or somewhere else. You know, if you want on try one of these from this particular cask. And it was the same in Trinidad. If you knew someone, you could pick something up that was, or you'd be gifted something that was something pretty special. And it wasn't the whiter or the younger rum that just came out from the stills and popped straight out. this was stuff that is matured in the same way that single malt is in principally bourbon casks in bonded warehouses in the Caribbean. The difference being is their bonded warehouses, they have to have a big pitched A-frame roof, and there are no doors on it because more likely than not, it might go up on a dry season day because of the amount of evaporation. They lose like 15% per year volume.
Wow.
Yeah. So you could pick up something that had aged either in a single cask or a multiple of age statement casks if you knew. So Outlaw Rum was born of, we came back to the UK, like you've introduced, we're in the Glass area, which is just on the edge of the Cabrach, which is one of the biggest illicit distilling sort of heritage areas in Scotland. And why not do it in the some of the Whiskey Elite's back garden, but actually come up with the best, shall we say, maturation release you can of some of the best rum, which, depending who you're going against or what you're comparing, making sure it's apples for apples, goes toe to toe with some of your best whiskey as well. So
just as a comparison, guys, 15% compared to we reckon about 2% maturation over here.
1 to 2, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a massive difference.
Yeah, so that's another reason why rum is blended, because you can imagine how much you lose over 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, in the UK, you'd lose maybe, you know, a 20-year-old, you're going to lose maybe 25 to 40% ish, you know, as a bandwidth. Whereas there, you're going to end up with 15% left, 20% left.
Yeah.
Right. So the other problem is as well is that it's not as simple a maturation cycle as we have here in the UK, because the humidity is so high. It's almost like the alcohol is reacting and steeping almost in a reaction with the cask, even though it is mostly bourbon casks, as we have here as our main sort of maturation cask for whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it was really a daft idea from me, a chat with my mate who we worked together in the oil field, you know, coach rugby together over there. And he and I were looking for work or thinking about some options, and he couldn't get it. You know, I just ran through it with him. I said, what we'll do, we'll take some really decent rum, cask age it, get a couple of our lads from the Trinidad Rugby Club, ham them up like Chris Eubank. They can come over here, go toe to toe at the whiskey festival. Everyone will call, like, we were going to give it a particularly politically incorrect name. And then the press would be unbelievable because of like local social media. And then we'd bring these two up and it would just go crickets. But, you know, it was, the idea came from the same place of a little bit of rebellious sort of ideology of, right, what is it that you would actually have that you would be proud to give somebody as a gift? So it's not something, you know, people give it and, yeah, okay, we're in the premium price range and spectrum, but if you hand it to somebody, it's something that holds its value and it shows of quality.
Mm. It certainly does that. Yeah, it's fantastic. And somewhere along the way, you picked up Vic.
Well, you see, Vic's very good at modeling. No, it wasn't a calendar, I promise. He's not. But whilst I was trying to make some inroads and chat to people, and, you know, there's a few really good sort of relationships I've made along the way, I was reading through the Cask and Still magazine. And Vic had just done a bit, and it's, you know, told of his experience. And there's a photo in there which he hates. And
yeah.
Sorry,
is this the one of you on the altar with the hat? And yeah, I noticed the hat in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the one. I mean, I've actually started using it again. I'm kind of growing into it now, Jim. And but at the time, this magazine came out, and it just played into all the cliches that you could play into of a minister working in the whiskey industry, and it was it was me with a big pulpit, and the guy said, "Bring the biggest Bible you've got." So it was a huge thing, and he took some pictures in the warehouse, and it went out in Cask and Still, and I got a few copies, and I hated it. My wife hated it even more, and then we just forgot about it. And then one day I got this kind of phone call out the blue. It was like, "Yeah, I saw you in Cask and Still. Are you interested in doing a project with rum?" And it was like, yeah, why not? I said, I'll come up. So I went up to Jim's house, and we started having a chat. And hopefully Jim kind of thinks the same thing. But I've got this policy of I don't work with people if I don't get on with them, if I don't like them. I've got to have a relationship with people. And almost straight away, me and Jim seem to hit it off. And a very similar sense of humor, and we find the same things funny, and and we're both passionate, and his kind of passion rubbed off. And I tasted the raw materials, and it tasted good. And then this kind of chance to be involved in this project, and and getting free rum every couple of months to taste. It was kind of like, it was exciting.
Yeah.
And we just started working together. And one of my strengths was doing sensory when I worked with Diageo, and I've done it since I became a consultant. So Jim needed a little bit of input in that. Although Jim and Rachel are pretty damn good with their nose as well, and their palate. So, and that was what, 3 years ago, Jim? Was it?
Yeah, 3 years ago now. Yeah, it would be. Yeah. But
yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but like Vic was taking notes. So we had samples that came across from Trinidad, and it started out at like 65, then it was like 35 blends, and then it was whittled down to 15. Then I got 5, but we only had sort of limited volumes. So when Vic came over, it was just like, ignore those, but this is the one we're going with. So, limited volume, but it was at cask strength. And because they lose water as well as alcohol, actually the ABV stays up quite high, even if it's an old rum. But Vic was sort of nosing and taking notes over an hour, and was asked me at least 4 times, "Look, are you trying to pull the wool over my eyes? Because this is like, are you sure this isn't a whiskey?" Like,
See, I can't remember that, because if I'd been saying those things, Jim, I would never have employed me. Now, who is this whiskey? Who is this whiskey expert? He doesn't blooming know the difference between whiskey and rum.
I mean, when I escorted Vic back to his car, there was a lot of Thunderbirds bottles in the footwell. So I was like, maybe,
No, it was, what? It was good quality stuff, and I could see what he was trying to do, and it wasn't gimmicky. And then he started showing me designs for the bottle and designs for the label, and it just said this is going to be quality stuff, and I just wanted to stick around and see what happened, and it's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
And
even at the rum stage, before the maturation, did the rum itself taste like whiskey before it went into the whiskey cask?
It had certain characteristics, and it had been matured in ex-bourbon casks.
So you'd had
so you got those kind of similar extractives coming out.
Yeah,
and it was. I have to be honest, it was probably one of the first rums I'd ever tasted. I mean, Jim's taken me on a bit of a rum education, but even though I hadn't tasted a lot of rum, I could tell that's a quality spirit.
Yeah.
You don't need any of this when you've got Outlaw around. You just drink it neat.
Yeah.
So that tasted nice as it was. And then Jim was saying, I'm going to get these casks, I'm going to get this cask, and I'm going to put it in this cask. And the thought of just playing around with all those casks and seeing what came out was really exciting.
Yeah.
And you can see with the products he's put out already, you know, the different casks are making a difference on that same rum that's going in. So, and it's great fun.
Are you getting a constant supply of the same rum, or is every batch of rum slightly different that you have to kind of manage? And
ever so, we're talking minute shades of grey, but it's the same profile of. Some companies try and hide it by saying it is as old as 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Some companies like us who are more honest say, look, it's 3, 5, 7, and 10 and 11, maybe some 12 in there. And that gives you that profile that we wanted, because when we actually had a chat with our partners in Trinidad, we said, your base spirit is as if you were going into a blind tasting with Balvenie Doublewood. That's your target market.
Okay.
And we gave them that based on, one, it's international renown, but also similar to if you were starting up a small car business and someone said, right, what's your base model? You're going to go M3. So you're pitching yourself against a quality and peer-reviewed, widely regarded as a very high quality product. And that's where we wanted to start, because it needed, for whatever reasons, if the casks were taking longer, or for whatever reason the cask didn't work, we wanted to make sure that the spirit, even if I gave it to you in a crappy old milk bottle, washed out plastic milk bottle, you know, similar to what you go in, you know, you go on holiday in France or wherever you go in Italy, you'll see signs for wine and this, that, and the other, and you go and it'll be some of the best wine you've ever tasted, but they'll give it to you in an old washed out 2-liter milk jug.
Yeah.
But we wanted to make sure that the spirit stood on its own 2 feet, and then we could work on some really traditional but classy design that stood us out as well. And therefore you had the marriage of the design as well as the product, of which Vic has also been not so much on the bottle piece, but especially on the spirit, obviously, like we've talked about, but then even to the point of we'll go up and nose casks. So it's been very tactile in that regard. You know, it's not just the base spirit. You're going up and actually touching and feeling the casks and picking them, cherry picking them to then put in the bonded warehouse.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. I mean, we've always been kind of, at least since, so I've had a pub in Inverurie for the last 15 years, in the shop for the last 6. We've always heard about this rum renaissance, this rum, this is the next big thing. And then before it became the next big thing, gin kind of shoved its way in and did its thing. They exploded. But again, we're now seeing this rum. But at the shop, or certainly in Scotland, we're seeing a lot of spiced rum. It seems to be the sweeter kind of style of rums, this big heavy vanillas and all this, that are added to a rum. What makes you different, in my opinion, is that you're getting that flavors, similar flavors, but from a cask. It just seems a bit more mature, a bit more grown up, which is great for us as a whiskey shop, because these kind of rums I see as a gateway to whiskey. They're a great stepping stone from spiced rum, mixing rum into that whiskey kind of field where we talk about cask maturation. We can talk about flavor, extracting flavor and all that. And it just to me, it's a really grown up rum. Is that the kind of pitch that you were thinking?
Yeah.
It's something that's not there just now, or wasn't there until you guys came along.
No, I mean, I could see that it was coming along. And my concern was that the maturation would take 3, 4, 5 years. And then what happens is that you are then behind the leaders of the avalanche that have already been out there because they've got younger spiced rum, or because, and being honest now, in the rum market, you're able to add a certain amount of extra sugar to the spirit, as well as you're able to add quite a bit of caramel coloring and to tweak it for certain palates. So there's certain countries which have actually very sweet rums, one because they distill it that way, but also because they add in extra sugar molasses to the product. But we wanted to show the best of the Caribbean and also the best techniques of Scotland, of maturing spirit and showing it in its natural guise. So we get it, no caramel added. It's distilled, it goes in cask, and then we get it, and then we cherry pick the cask to show that this is rum, and it's rum in its finest matured form. Now, you know, we've still got stuff here that we will keep back and let age for longer. But, you know, at the minute, the ride where we came from is that we think that rum is as good as whiskey. And again, if you're comparing apples for apples. But when to go back to your original point, was Ronza Kappa was about, Diplomatico was kind of coming around, but they're a bit different because Diplomatico's light, quite soft. It's got this like citrus taste on it, but then it waters out, but it's very drinkable. Then you've got Ronza Kappa or Ronza Kappa XO, which is quite more sugary. You get a lot of molasses and almost demerara in there, but there's not much else. It's just quite sweet. But because Ronza Kappa has been around in the airports for the last 10 years, they're commanding sort of 65 to 80 pound a bottle, whereas, you know, depending on which release we do, we're still cheaper than them, but I'd go toe-to-toe with them every day of the week.
What you guys are doing for me, my sort of early experience of rum was, you know, just the kind of dark rums and stuff like that you get, and you'd have a rum and coke, and I really was not a fan of it, and I could never see myself going down that road at all. But when I was in the jobs in the health service, my old consultant psychiatrist, her husband was from Scotland, but he was born and brought up in St Kitts and Nevis. And I remember going round to their house one day for a barbecue, and he was saying, "Russell, come on, I'll take you through, and I'll give you a taste of some proper rum." And he gave me some stuff from the Caribbean, and I thought, this is completely different. I can understand. Well, as a whiskey drinker, I thought I can understand. I could like this, and the kind of stuff that you guys are producing. There's one or two others coming through as well that are starting to produce. Is the stuff that I recognise as the flavour that he let me taste. You know, way back, but the stuff he was taking back here from the actual Caribbean, which was a completely different. And I remember after I tasted that, I was going around the shops trying to find something like it, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing like it anywhere in any shop that you could find.
It's only been the last 2 years, really. And you're starting to get stuff out now. But what's happening is those that have actual some provenance are already being snapped up. So there was one out of Colombia called La Hechicera that Vic and I tasted almost first or second of the podcast. That got snapped up by Pernod Ricard, I think. Was it start of the year? And then, you know,
I think, was it Pernod? They I know that Mangrove are the UK distributors for it now, so we've actually got some of that in the shop. I haven't tried it yet.
I actually liked it. It's very floral, light, but you know, it had real staying power on the taste, whereas a lot of the others, like I'd say, I prefer Santa Teresa to Diplomatico purely because you get more of a long-lasting flavor. But you know, it's that citrusy notes that you can get on pretty much most rums, unless it's more they've pushed it towards the more molasses, sugary taste. But what I try, you know, I bought in a few, and Vic thinks I must be broke now because of my understairs cabinet is
I've got a whole shelf. I've got a whole shelf of little samples that you keep sending over. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
but like we tried
job.
We tried Dictador. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're from Colombia, and they did the blenders releases with the various distilleries like what are they called? They're out through Abelar on the way out.
Glenallachie.
No, after Glenallachie. Glenfarclas.
Oh yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
So they were blending various spirits and did a very sort of limited release, and they were like £500 a bottle, this, that, and the other. I said, well, okay, they're in quite high esteem. I'll try that. Tried some of that, and it didn't stand up against La Hechicera. And speaking even to Billy Walker, which I've done on a few occasions, and we've chatted quite a bit about rum, and he's been, you know, he's been great to me and very complimentary. But he was saying, you know, a lot of the wood management in some of these countries is not so focused as it is here. So the maturation of the spirit itself is a variability, but it's, again, each country is very unique because they have their own palate.
Yeah, they have their own rules as well on rum as well. It's a minefield. Some countries have different laws on what is a rum.
Right.
It's fascinating. I've got 3 books here and I'm nowhere near finished them. About learning, trying to catch up on rum because it is going to be the next big thing. I think we need to get our head in gear for it. But it's an absolute warren of rules and regulations, and it's different in every country, isn't it?
That's mad, yeah. And it's like also the product they're using. You know, Scottish whiskey. Everybody knows you've got barley, and then the fermentation process and the distillation. That's what makes it unique with the water and then the various casks people use. But in rum, some people are using cane juice, some people are using molasses, some people are using jaggery, some people are using a mix of the two. Also, the molasses is a variation on it. Some people are using agricultural grade, some people are using not. I mean, it still produces a sugar broth that you basically then go and distill.
Yeah.
But all of these things of where you get it from. So it's completely different. So if you went to Martinique, you would find rum agricole more around the place, which we tried. And I'm sorry, but I can't drink it neat. No, I mean, and I bought some really quite middle of the road, quite expensive stuff, and it's nowhere near what you'd want to do just on ice. But then in that country, it's seen as a prized product, and it's got real provenance. It's local, and that's what people would drink for supporting their country, and they're very proud of it. So, you know, it's a palate piece as well.
That's it. It's suited to the local palate because I was out working in Myanmar and drank some Myanmar whiskey, and you know they were all lapping it up, but it's like it wasn't appropriate for my palate. So it just depends what country you're in, doesn't it?
Yeah. Because I think Brazil, it's cachaça, isn't it? Is the big molasses or sugarcane based spirit. It's not quite rum, but it's the same kind of idea. It's a wonderful cocktail drink, but again, like your agricole, I'm not sure if it's something you could drink neat.
Yeah.
No, so for us it was really just it was getting the right, we call it our base spirit, but really it was getting the right blended rum from our colleagues in Angostura, and then really showing them that we were serious about this and we were doing it to produce the most premium product and really show rum in its best light. So yeah, that's where Outlaw Rum ethos comes from. And doing it in, should I say, the Dufton Elite's back garden. So a bit of a longbowman salute from just across the hill, you know. So it's a little bit of the outlaw mentality coming in there, you know.
And it's also, Jim, it's being careful with the casks and the cask management as well, because we're not trying to make whiskey.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got that rum base, but it's got influences out of the wood.
That must be tricky for you to, because you're getting the space spirit and you're trying to preempt what the cask is going to do to it, rather than as a distiller tweak the distillation to get a flavor of whiskey. You've got the same, to a degree, the same whiskey. And you're
and it was difficult judging that. And again, I don't know why Jim's employing me, because I said, you know, you need to get good casks and have a range of casks. You know, if you've not got it in your warehouse, you can't make it. So you need a range of casks. But it's going to take you years. You know, it's going to take quite a while before that influence is coming out and you can really spot differences. And man, we were seeing differences within months across the different casks. And probably a sign that Jim had gone out and got some really good casks. But it was a real surprise to me that using the same base rum, you were getting expressions already after 4, 5, 6 months. You know, different styles using the different casks.
Were you manipulating the casks at all, Jim? Are you doing anything with them? Are you just, you know, straight from the distillery? Are you kind of tweaking them a bit? Are you changing the size or?
I do arm curls with them now and again when they're full, of course. You know.
One of these.
Yeah, exactly. No, we started out, and Vic and I went in and had a chat with the guys at the cooperage in Craigellachie, and we're pretty much exclusive through them. And I just kept chatting to them, and when they had something interesting come in, or they were going through, I mean, if anybody is going through and they see the massive pyramids of casks and going to see the sentiment, I mean, those guys are artisans in woodcraft. But, they're dealing with all sorts of clients, and they've got some pretty special wood there. And that for us just shows the quality, not only of the process, but what's been happening with Scottish whiskey, which we're just trying to we're following the same practices. Like Vic says, there was no point us getting rum and trying to turn it into a whiskey.
No.
But what we wanted to do, and it's not finishing, because finishing normally is only like 3 to 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. Where we wanted to be is we take our base product, which is good enough to bottle and compete with a lot of other folk, and then we put it in casks, and then we come out and show it in its best matured expression form. So when we went to the casks, sadly I haven't been able to get it to you yet, but I'll actually have it in hand on Monday. But I can deliver to you the double cask, which is actually 200 litre ex-bourbon cask, but has had single malt whiskey in it from Spacesides and Highland distilleries. But the double cask also comes from that we've had 200 litre and quarter cask, which are 125 litre. So they take out a couple of staves, pretty much the same length, almost the same sort of end piece, and just to see how it changed. And the double cask came about actually because I was like, right, on their own, the quarter cask, it was maturing, but we found that the Speyside and Highland cask were taking a lot longer to really move on from the base spirit than some of the other casks were doing. So, but then when we actually blended them and merged equal ratio of each, it really almost became like Outlaw Rum's big brother. They are, what's your quote? They are greater than the sum of the constituent parts.
It was weird, wasn't it, Jim? It was these couple of rums, and then you put them together, and there was something about that mix that just elevated everything.
Yeah.
And it was really, again, another surprise. It was really, really surprising. But that was, taking them and blending it and letting it set, and it was really just lifted it up, didn't it?
Yeah. So we've been.
And that's something you can see yourself doing more, or is experimenting with different maybe sizes of casks and seeing what that does? Or...
Yeah, well, at the minute, to begin with, we started with, again, small company startup, basically, doing it out of your pocket. And so I got about 25 casks and, a couple of quarters, but mostly 200s ex-bourbon, but from different distilleries. And now after that, I picked up a few others, mainly because of just continuing to speak to the folk at the cooperage, and when something new or different's there, it's like, okay, what's the provenance of that cask versus others? And it's like, right, okay. So Vic told me, look, don't go Isla route. It really won't work. So
again, I don't know why. I don't know why he's employing me.
He's bang on. It's a terrible dram, Vic. You're quite right.
You know what, Russell? It was after 3 months. It was awful.
And you're rubbing your hands, Vic, saying, I told you.
but oh, sorry, on you go, Jim. Yeah.
So I initially got a couple, and it's not difficult. All you got to do is look at the label. They're alphanumeric. So Isla Cask 5 might happen to be. Oh, look, what's Russell got in the background?
Oh,
right. Yeah. So one might be something beginning with A. So anyway, it's quite a smoky cask.
Yeah.
And I liked it straight from the get-go because I actually am a single malt fan and I am a whiskey fan. But my education in that started in Inverurie in the George Hotel with friends of ours who did the usual thing. Englishman, do you like whiskey? Arm around shoulders, lock in. And it's like, oh, here we go. And it actually started with Bowmore.
Okay, they were kind.
But then it ended up with like Ardbeg and then maybe a Laphroaig, and then I think my wife said I was fighting in my sleep, but there you go. But for me, it was like, right, I think the rums, I don't think it's going to be steamrolled, but that would be the concern if you were doing it from the beginning. Is rum's considered quite delicate, quite light, fruity. And that's why we've come up with our rose plots as well, because it's not exactly the same note as you get with whiskey. You don't get the faints in there and some other things that you get in whiskey. So Vic and I spent time, and I actually asked Vic to come up with a rose plot just so that we had something where people could see those like comparisons. And for the Isla cask, actually Vic loved. No, he didn't. He hated it. But then
I really didn't like it.
The first bottling we did was Outlaw Rum that you guys are drinking and I'm drinking and Vic's got. That was in November last year. And I also did a small bottling of those casks, the Isla ones as well. Vic was quite Marmite on it, even by the time we got to the end. Oh, it is, but, and I was like, good, that's what I want.
It was kind of, it was kind of getting there, but that first one after 3 months was
bonfire.
It was like burnt rubber and so in your face. But it mellowed and it softened. And I tell you what, guys, he's got some really good Isla stuff coming through.
If it's better than this is fantastic. There's no burnt rubber at all here. Subtle smoke, salted caramel, toffee, walnuts, vanilla cream and peaches, syrup sponge, which I absolutely love. This is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
And then like my palate, my gran is, made it through World War II, this, that, and the other. She used to do that tray bake of like toffee in the Aga that you used to have to get a hydraulic gun to try and get it out. So it reminded me of that like old like tray baked toffee, because you get the caramel notes, but a bit of orange in there, and it would just sort of keep going. But the other thing that
I'm making it neat tonight, but it makes an absolutely fantastic old fashioned.
Yeah.
The original, the flagship, as you call it.
Does it? Yeah, I've not tried that, because the other thing is that from where we were, Trinidad, a lot of guys would just, because it's so hot there, average temperature is about 34, 35 with like 80 to 100% humidity. And January, like mid through to mid-February is what they call, so it's the trade winds that come across. So the wind switches, right? So it comes from the west. And that cools off. But otherwise, the humidity's in the late 80s to 100% the whole time. So if you're out for a drink, you'd be outside, under a roof or something like that, just to keep the sun off, or this, that, and the other. And all the pubs are big, sort of, you've got an slightly enclosed barrier, but a lot of times it's on big sort of verandas. So it'd be like if you were drinking outside with your mates or buy out a rum shop, you're on the street anyway. So you'd have it maybe with a bit of ice or a chilled glass. But then a lot of them were doing it with like a rum and coconut, but it was fresh coconut water, or they do rum and soda, similar to like scotch and soda, just on a long drink. But you'd start off with a couple, like you would here, if you were going to do that way anyway. You'd start with a couple like neat drams, and then you would go into sort of drinking the rum with a mixer if you're going to go on it all night. But
I love Mike's dedication to making like an old fashioned or something. I just can't. I've got no patience. Once it's in the glass, it's like, no, I'm just drinking it. And it's like, it's not that I wouldn't. I'm not against cocktails or mixers or what. I'm not against any of that. I just haven't got the patience. I just want to drink it.
And for me, it's not, rum hasn't got, shall we say, snobbery's maybe not the right word, but it kind of feels like that a lot of times with some of the whiskey and stuff. Yeah. So whiskey. Whereas rum, if that's your drink, then fine. But what was really interesting for me was how you were saying, Mike, how it was almost an introduction to single malt or like decent whiskey. Our rum, the number of mates and a couple of family members who their palate cannot take some of the stronger flavors, even some of the light space side whiskey, for them, the nose, it just for whatever reason, it just tricks them out. And I'm talking about very proud Scotsmen as well as like family members from mine down in the West Country or elsewhere. But yet with Outlaw Rum, that I've had folk who really can't drink nips or like decent drams, and they're quite happily sipping away on that.
Yeah. I suppose on that, it works the other way around as well. Like maybe some rums are too sweet for a whiskey drinker. But this one, again, it's got that balance where, as Vic was saying, you sure this is not a whiskey? It's almost on that.
Right.
It's not too sweet as a rum, and I guess that comes from there's not the added sugar and all that. So a couple of my first introduction to grown-up rum, shall we say, was the El Dorado 15. Not the El Dorado.
El Dorado, not the swanky drink.
Not the swanky El Dorado, but the 50-year-old El Dorado. And that was really, to me, is a good rum, but too sweet. And then I moved on to Diplomatico and started, so their reserve was a really kind of staple of mine. But the selection that they have, Selection de Famille, I don't know if you've tried that one. It's got a really nice dry aftertaste. And that to me is a perfect rum. And this one is just on that level where it's not too sweet. It doesn't have that artificial sweetness. You can sip it, you can enjoy it, but that finish is quite dry, quite citrusy. And it just means that you're not glugging it and getting too sickly of it. You've just got a nice balance.
I said, well, Jim's been educating me, like I say, with literally dozens of different rums. And some of them are just so sickly sweet.
Yeah.
But like you say, Mike, my palate is for Scotch whiskey. That's what I like. I'm not keen on bourbons either. But some of them, it was just like, you could feel the sugar almost on your lips, and it was. Yeah. But,
are you managing to use your previous contacts, Vic, in getting cask sources, or?
No, and Jim's actually doing that. He's got some. He's getting some great stuff off the guys at Speyside Cooperage. I mean, I know the guys there.
Yeah.
But he's got some great stuff.
Jim's got all his rugby players in the van to persuade him, just in case they won't give him the cask. That's the.
No, what amazed me when I went up the first time with Jim at the Cooperage, the chap that was showing us around, it was. Really helpful and really, do you want one of them? Do you want one of them? Have you seen these? And what a selection it was. And like I say, he's got my favourite Islay distillery. He's got a few casks of them, so hopefully that'll come out nice, and some nice wine casks that's going to give some good stuff. So it's all interesting.
And just on a completely irrelevant topic, Vic, what's your favourite Islay whiskey?
Am I allowed to say that, Jim?
Yeah, it's a separate question, I guess. A completely separate question. My favourite Islay whiskey is Kalila. Lovely dram, lovely dram. Yeah,
beautiful site. I used to be fortunate enough to base myself there sometimes when I was operating over on Islay with my role with Diageo. I used to go over to Islay quite a lot. Fell in love with Kalila with the site, and also fell in love with the whiskey. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand,
Yeah.
If you know a place and you love it and it's gorgeous and the nature's brilliant and you've seen the whales and the otters, and you're going to like the whiskey.
Yeah.
So,
there's a reason it's a favourite with independent bottlers, isn't there?
It's got some great. I've got a tiny dribble of 18-year-old left that I managed to source when I was working for Diageo. We got these 20 centilitre bottles, and they were selling them for a £5 because I don't know why we got them really cheap, and I managed to find a box of them over in one of the staff sales shops in Bushmills. And I just happened to know somebody that was going over there. So they took me back a box of 12 of these
nice
little Kalila 18-year-olds, and I'm just about finished my last one. So that's one of my favourite drams, Kalila 18.
Yeah, it's such a good. I think my favourite ever whiskey was a Morrison Mackay single cask, Kalila 88, I think it was. And it was just like the world's most expensive fruit pastel. It was absolutely super.
I do like peaty whiskies, Not so much peaty rum, but that's a different story. I do like peaty whiskies, but more on the Kalila kind of scale, you know.
Yeah.
I'll drink Lagavulin. I'll drink Lafroig now because I'm getting used to it, but I couldn't. I've got a couple of Bowmores that I quite like.
So you must have been getting paid to drink Lagavulin at one time, I guess. That's
Sorry?
You must have been getting paid to drink Lagavulin at one time.
Well, we used to be able to buy it at £15 a bottle in the staff shop. And then the marketing department kind of got its act together and realised that you could, if I get my story right, I think this is the right figures. We were told that the marketing department decided they want to sell more Lagavulin in Finland because they could get £90 a bottle for it. Because the Finns really like the Lagavulin. So they pulled all the Lagavulin from the staff sales shops right across the Agio. Of course they were doing the right thing. Are we going to sell it to the Finns at 90 quid, or are we going to sell it to Vic and his mates for 15? So they sold it. God, we almost had a strike on our hands.
Is Jim as generous with his staff purchases, is he?
But then that was back in the day when you could buy a box of 6 Mortlach Flora and Fauna for about 120 quid.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. Yeah.
Can't even get one of them for 120 quid now.
Yeah.
Double that. Yeah. So Jim, that's the gauntlet laid on the staff purchasing. 15 quid a bottle, I think, is what Vic's asking for.
Well, I think he's basically saying don't ever stop the free samples because that's going to be a mutiny.
well, actually, I was gonna say I haven't paid for any of these. I was so excited by what Jim was up to. Myself and 3 of our mates, myself and 2 of my mates joined Club Outlaw back at the start. So we each get a couple of bottles a year. I think is it this year and next year again, Jim? I can't remember.
Right.
So I mean, I thought, I'm gonna buy some of this stuff, and then a couple of my mates joined in as well. So we joined Club Outlaw. But no, he's really good to me, Jim. Yes, I didn't have to buy the bourbon and the Islay, and I've not even opened them yet because he keeps giving me samples. So he is good to me.
So just tell us a little bit about Club Outlaw then, Jim. What's the
Club Outlaw? Yeah.
Okay, well, so actually, I haven't. It's not like a what do you call it? It's not like a crowdfund or anything like that. What it was is that I was working in the oil field at the time, and a few mates were interested in what I was doing, and also realised, as most people have, that pensions are okay to a point, but unless you're doing something with your money and making it work, you could find yourself in your mid-60s kind of Scoobied, unless there's something that you're working on that you're passionate about, and then you're going to keep going with that, and sod the retirement age. It doesn't mean anything. So a couple of mates were really interested in what I'd done. A few had actually come and visited with us when we were in the Caribbean. And when I showed them what I was doing, they were like, can I be involved? And I said, well, look, to be honest, I don't want to marshal like a Roman Senate of opinions and other stuff. But if you want to be involved as in the business, what I'll do is we'll set it up as almost like advanced sales, but effectively, how genuine I am. So what I'll do is that you've got an option here of basically buying in the cases, but then when we're able to evaluate the business, which takes 3 to 5 years of accounts, so that will be next year or the year after, so 2023 probably, the company will get valued. We'll say that the Club Outlaw who's bought in, that'll be worth 10 or 12%, and then if you haven't taken all the rum, that'll be a credit against shares and so on. So for those who don't have, what we'll also say is, Club Outlaw people, once we have it, if you want to buy more shares, and this is all to be set up, it's bloody complicated, but once it's all set up, then we'll say, right, we'll do this, and then what we'll also do is we'll invite a few other folk to come in, and we'll open up another maybe 5% of the business, so that 15% of the business is actually being is owned, or there are folk there who are getting payback, if you want, for one, giving us the not the confidence, Well, just that cash flow as well. Once you're a small business, just even paying for small things. I mean, I work with 42 Studio in Aberdeen, who've been absolutely brilliant to me. But the website, the design of the bottles, the labeling, everything really creatively like that has come through them. And the bottle that Russell's got right beside him, you know, the printers are Aberdeen based as well. That's from Windmill Printers. You know, we've tried to keep everything that we can as northeast Scotland as we possibly can. And sadly, you know, bottling we have to send down the road, but that's two contract bottlers in Glasgow who've been brilliant to us as well. So there was being a startup business, having no knowledge or heritage in the spirits or drink industry at all, apart from a rugby player who's drunk a lot of beer and done a few daft things and been rather ill on a few occasions. It was just an idea. So it was really something that we were pushing. But again, kind of like what Vic says, look, you meet people and some people will stick their nose up in the air and don't get it. And it's like, that's fine. On you go, jog on.
Mm-hmm.
But then you meet people who you can work with. And especially once they see the product and see what you're trying to do, those who actually appreciate at least a genuine product and something that's got real integrity to it, then you start to gather a bit of momentum. So Club Outlaw was really also that if we do get to that point when we're able to do dividends, and I'm not, I did chat to the fellas at what's that spice rum based out of Banbury? Dark Matter, Jim Ewan. Yeah, Jim Ewan. He's a former mud engineer from the oil field. So he and I were chatting about stuff, and he says, "Well, I look, did he say? I'm paraphrasing now, but he said, remember me when Diageo buy you out." And I'm like, that's not the game. I'm not interested. This isn't a quick, like Dragon's Den, show a graph and then, right, we'll sell here, we'll make a bit of money and then we'll do the same thing again. It really was about trying to set something up locally and employ local people and trying to help athletes and do something special in the northeast of Scotland.
Right. So just before we came on, kind of in the green room, I suppose, before we came on, you mentioned about the warehouse plans. So, that I suppose will be the next big step for you as a company is your own warehouse. Yeah.
And we actually bounded around the idea, and it's a little bit difficult because it's a little bit, I wouldn't say there's loads of fiefdoms, but around here there's still estates which control the majority of the land. So even the Cabrac, which sounds like a big open moor like Dartmoor, which is a national park where I grew up on, it's owned by half it's owned by the Glenfiddich family and half it's owned by this Moran character who wasn't allowed back in the States because he robbed a load of pensioners like teens, early 20s. But they pretty much allegedly.
Yeah, well, who owns Scotland's on the other night? So yeah, there's
Aye. And it's shocking to see how much land that isn't.
Yeah.
But then also the amount of old buildings that actually were only let run down in the 80s because even small tenant farmers the rents were put up and put up and put up even in the 80s. And then what happened as soon as the tenants left, they left the windows open and took off a couple roof tiles and then said it's uninhabitable, just so that there's a few people that could do a bit more grouse shooting with their mates.
Yeah.
And so for us, it was right. We need to stick to the integrity and the business and the idea and the ethos that we came up with to begin with. So we just had to be patient about what came up locally that we could do. So after chatting to a couple of like-minded people, we're hoping to put in plans for our own granite-based bonded warehouse that's done very traditionally, lime mortar, old dressed granite, done in the area of Glass, just off the main road. So on your way up to Glenfiddich, you'll see us hopefully loud and proud on the side in a very traditional northeast headquarters.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're also looking to that. That will be. I mean, it's like anything else. You start off and you have to compromise on what you're doing with your buildings, how much money you've got to spend, this, that, and the other. Which is where Club Outlaw helped, because that gave us capital, and we did have. I think because we're spirits, we got knocked back on every grant apart from Scottish Enterprise for a digital grant for the website, but everything else went to toddler groups, other bits and even councils. Just spirits, no, not interested.
Mhm.
So it was down to us to make it happen. So, and that's fine. I didn't expect any handouts, and I'm not expecting anybody to feel pity for me or us at all. But what happened with Club Outlaw is, they'll be treated as royalty for us going forward, because they gave us the cash flow that we would have struggled without it. But they've also, I suppose that's the other thing about the northeast of Scotland, that, a lot of people around the rest of the UK won't know it because they just see oil as something that happens elsewhere. They don't really understand it. But what it means is a lot of people from the northeast of Scotland have been all over the world and are far more well-traveled than a lot of people across the rest of the UK. So I had one drilling manager who I've known for 20 years come up to me and said, I used to be a Diplomático drinker. I'm not anymore. I'm just drinking your stuff.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mike and I are all about promoting the northeast of Scotland, and Aberdeenshire, and it's fantastic to have another sort of thing to promote, another product to promote, and to have rum in there as well. Gin gets heavy, whiskey gets heavy. So yeah, absolutely. Is the Club Outlaw still available for people to join?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I basically had to, it was open for a 2-year period, and it was, like I said, it was for people who I knew through the oil field, and Vic had sort of said, look, initially I'd said, well, it's open, but it wasn't until sort of close to when we actually had the bottle and the design, and he came in with a couple of his mates, so it wasn't, on an individual basis, if you group together, it was okay. But what I would do is I would be happy later on, once we've actually got the business up and running and there's some momentum for that, we would do sort of a release of shares that people could buy into. So that would probably be earliest, that would be early 2023, but that would be on an invite basis, because I'm not doing an AGM and flogging free booze, this, that, and the other, as other people have.
Like a concert or something like that, or
Wham revival. No, I'm not interested in that. And what I would do, it would be for people who I've worked with, and the same ethos of it's people that I can work with, and 2, give a shit about what they're doing, and 3, actually see some validity, not just in what they're doing, but what we're trying to do, and that it's a partnership there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounds as though you've got it all well thought out, well planned, and kind of. Or maybe not.
It still feels very much like that. When I was flying by the seat of my pants, the speedos fell off a while back. So it's very much skinned a driving wheel.
Yeah, the speedos are falling off, and you're scared to get out of the water, so you just keep going.
Yeah. The sharks have bitten, and it's all over. But no,
do you think you could ever get to the stage where you're distilling your own rum on site in Scotland, or
no? And I actually went to Isla in the summer, and there's is it Jura next door? Jura's got its own rum. There's rum being made on rum.
Yeah,
there's all this, and we don't make the base product, as in Scotland. Yeah, okay, you get some molasses, but really that gets imported from somewhere else. If I wanted to do something like that, then I'd rather go down what Arbiki are doing, what Kilhoman have done. They're producing their own base product to then
They're okay and
ferment and distill. And throwing sugarcane up in the cabrac. I mean, I don't
gonna
want
work, is it?
I was over there today. I mean, it was warm, but I mean, warm. I'd only 3 layers on. So
Yeah, exactly.
there's a reason. Yeah, there's a reason the Cabrac's known as the largest war memorial in Europe, isn't it?
Yeah.
First World War, everyone went off to fight, and hardly anyone came back. So it was just kind of abandoned and left. And yeah, you can hardly grow sheep on it, let alone any crops.
It's slightly windy. The sheep complain about the cold.
Yeah.
Well, the sheep, even the sheep breeds. Like my wife's from the Lake District, so she likes Herdwicks, which are, they're supposed to be like a sheep that the Vikings brought over. They're real hardy fell sheep. And there's actually a couple of flocks up here, mainly because, like you say, when we get a lot more snow than even Huntley does, we're only 7 miles away. If you go in the Cabrac, they've got it another 5 degrees colder and probably another 2 to 3 feet of snow deeper. And we might still have 4 feet to 5 feet here.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I can't believe you're not growing sugarcane, Jim. That's there's no dedication.
I like a challenge, but I don't want to go straight away.
I think we need a few more centuries of climate change before you can get sugarcane in the Cabrac.
If you were going to try and grow sugarcane, I think the lights and the heat that you would generate, they would think you were growing something else anyway. So,
I think what we might do is, if it would depend, hopefully when we're able to travel and we can all be like adults again, and viruses aren't ruling the world or fear mongering, we can get back to Trinidad. And we were Vic, the plan was Vic and I and my wife as well to go back to Trinidad, but also to sit down with Angostura and actually map out a sort of forward plan. Okay. The other option is Angostura wasn't the only distillery on Trinidad. There was Caroni as well, but that's down in the swamp area. Now, there's a lot of people that say that they have Caroni rum. Caroni rum was a collective. It got basically socialized, and there are warehouses still with casks, probably with either cane or some vegetation growing through them right now. But yet people are still saying that they have Caroni rum.
Right. Okay.
But what I would like to do is, if that agriculture is making a comeback in Trinidad, so if we did it on a small scale, where and Vic and I had talked about it a little bit, of maybe it's just us doing sugarcane, but in a different way. And my business partner Pat and I have talked about this, and this is looking into the future. If we did small batch distilling and then maturation, the original maturation cycle in Trinidad, one of the options is do you take out, because there isn't a copper pot still on Trinidad anymore,
right?
Do you set up a water bath copper pot still to your own specification to do your own small batch distilling there, and actually bolster a part of the community in a different area, as well as employing people that I know in Trinidad who would relish the chance to do something a bit different and support the economy in a different way. So you're giving back a bit as well.
Yeah.
It's what I was thinking about when I was talking about distillation, and that is you're right on the cusp of whiskey country in Scotland, and the amount of visitors at the Cabrac and Duft and all that. We spoke a couple of weeks to Vesperus Gin, who have they're still in a barn. They have plans to make a visitor centre, but at the moment they have people, and it's the back of Rothy Norman, it's the back of Beyond, and they have people travelling and turning up at the house and asking for a tour of the distillery. And just there's no distillery. The best thing about it is the view. It's a beautiful view, but I just had if you've got that catchment nearby who are traveling through anyway, is there an opportunity? The way that you're speaking to me sounds like that's not really something you want. You don't want the tourism. You don't want that kind of
You're talking about a visitor centre is a slightly different thing to because you could
the warehouse, something that people would come to for a warehouse tasting or something to look at is
that. Yeah. So there is a plan for that, yes, and there's an old Croft site that I'm hoping to catch as well, and there would be a corporate stroke tasting option, which we've done with Vic or myself, maybe combined. And that would be done on one area, but the warehousing, what I don't want to do is that exact example of people knocking on the door and setting off alarms at 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. Can we have a tour? It's like it's bonded warehouses.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things of, there's still that to look at. And yes, in the long-term plan, but that might be 5-6 years away from something, because the cooperage do something. You could do something similar where you've got if you go to the cooperage at Speyside, they've actually got that elevated area where you actually overlook the visitor and you see the coopers working. Now we're going to have people working in the warehouse, but effectively they're going to be sitting and seeing casks. There's another bit there of HMRC and licenses of who's going to be in that bonded warehouse.
Difficulties.
The business point of view, this absolute gold mine of a tourist trap, and I thought, I could understand why you wouldn't want that, but obviously, as a business kind of point of view, why wouldn't you kind of draw a little bit?
See, what you've got here is you've got Mike promoting you, and you've got Vic undermining you. So this is quite a good argument going on here.
Try not to do that too much, Russell.
Maybe you need me around for the voice of reason.
Maybe that's because Russell Vic wants it all to himself.
Yes, in the long term, but again, it's when you look at that, then you end up with it scares the crap out of me because I've never set up a business because I'm also thinking long term of we need a group of people then to manage tourism on its own, and I'm not talking about going out there and getting people in the door. I'm thinking more about just managing people on site. So what does that look like? And all of a sudden the land that you've got, there's a comfort factor of, well, do I need more land just to make sure that the tourists are well away from the warehouse? There's all sorts of bits there which I haven't fathomed out yet. And to be honest,
I can see some of these things just evolving. I think the gin thing, I mean, it's kind of, the last maybe 10, maybe even less than that, the explosion. And some of these ideas are starting to evolve. Lost Loch have got their distillery school. They've got this where you can go and kind of make the gin now. Vespers are looking at having a visitor centre. So that's just kind of starting to evolve. But these are well established now. I mean, they're almost taking over our shop. Rum's now got a whole row, so it's starting to come into the shop as well, and it's becoming a big thing. So I can see the potential for some of these things evolving as time goes on. But right now, it's about producing the spirit. It's about getting people into it. But talking of which, of course, and talking about tastings, we're able to talk about something that's coming up in the shop.
So guys who are listening, we're talking kind of. Unfortunately for you guys at home, unless you've got a bottle of Outlaw, you can't join in with the
late to the party.
So what we want to do is we want to offer you the chance to have this conversation, but enjoy the Outlaw Rum as well, I suppose. And we'll often talk about how the Blether is not about promoting. It's not about the shop. It's not about promoting sales or anything. But since we've got Jim and Vic on, we can't not advertise the fact that we've got a tasting coming up with you guys on the 3rd of December. So if you want to taste more Outlaw Rum, you maybe been listening and you think this sounds great. How do I, apart from buying a bottle, what do I do to find out more? I'll just pop the link in the the chat there.
And we'll even allow you to buy bottles after you've tasted it as well, because that's
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a hybrid tasting. So we can send you out the tasting packs, and you can join in. We've got a camera set up in the tasting room, so many in the shop, so many at home, and you can join. And Jim will be here. I'm not sure, Vic, are you going to get involved in that, or I'm not sure if you're.
Not sure. It might pop over. You never know.
You never know.
just come and sit in and taste the Isla stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Get my driver to take me over.
Absolutely. That's what I'm going to have to do. Or I need a bed in Mike's house. I think that's the other option.
Get you guys drinking stuff as well, and obviously you don't have to wait till then. That's a few weeks away. Yeah. It's obviously available not just from us, but a few of our local spirit shops. Aberdeen have got it. Where else can guys get it? Because I'm keen to get you guys out there. So if folk who aren't Inverurie based,
there's also our website, so we'll post it out for free from the prices. It's all on the website. So www.outlawrum.co.uk. But otherwise, there's support your local business.
That's all you need. That's all you need. Just direct to you guys. I was only joking when I said we were going to come on.
I saw these other shops. Let's get straight.
I said cut the middleman out, Jim. Saw these shops.
Yeah.
They've been good to us actually, and it's been interesting because it's been very, like when we were talking to some of the whiskey distilleries, 80-90% of them just turned their nose up and went, but then a few were interested because especially like Rum with Provenance really stood on its own 2 feet and listened to what I had to say. They knew that I wasn't just trying to do a quick sort of Del Boy job. So there's the Essence of, which is a cost cutter in Huntley. They also support us. Otherwise, there's Still Spirit in Udney. So we did our initial release. We did the Whiskey Hammer. Yeah. So the initial release, if you want, we did an auction with them and sort of get us started just before Christmas. So that worked quite well. And then there's a few other places now. There's a couple online businesses based down in the Central Belt, which are also taking us. But actually, it's Robert Graham's they're one of the oldest tobacconists in Britain, but they're based out of Scotland. So their headquarters is Glasgow, but they're also Edinburgh and Cambridge. So they've been a good support of ours and done sort of cigar and rum tastings along with the sort of music. During COVID, they were putting on gigs and all sorts, really just trying to keep it social and so on. Really good group there. And then Sota Cigars in Mayfair in London.
Brilliant.
So
no, it's good that these guys, and let's say you're moving in that cigar industry I think cigars and whiskey are kind of a new fad, but cigar and rum, I think, given the kind of Caribbean link and all that, they kind of go hand in hand.
Before I came in holiday through the house, and I really want to go and light one up now because with the rum tonight. Yeah, you do, don't you? I've got a couple of questions I want to ask, just on a kind of more personal level, and I suppose Vic's been quiet for a little while, so maybe come over to Vic for a wee bit. But have you always been in the church as well, Vic? Have you always been?
I've been in the church since my early 20s, and then early 2000s I started moving into church leadership and became a minister. Did the correspondence course. You can call me reverend if you wish, but I don't.
I think we should.
It's very naughty. Sometimes if I go to a hotel and you use the prefix reverend, they give you the room furthest away from the bar, so it's nice and quiet.
Okay.
So that's not. Although I did do a wedding ceremony one time, and when they came through with the whiskey creme brulee for the pudding, they came through with a non-alcoholic one and said, "Who's this for?" And nobody had a clue. And then they came back and they said, "Oh, that'll be for the minister." And I was sitting at the table with a bottle of Talisker.
So, when they put you furthest away from the bar, is that a good thing or a bad thing for you? Because
it's a good thing for noise wise if you're trying to sleep at 11 o'clock at night and there's a wedding going on or something. But it's not that, and I need to be kept away from it. And so I've been a minister for about, I think, 12 years now, Russell, running a church.
Yeah.
But running the church and working for Diageo, I was doing 2 jobs and it was getting too difficult.
Yeah.
So I left Diageo, almost 7.5 years ago now, and then started the consultancy.
Yeah.
Because the salary in the church was a lot less than the salary in Diageo.
Oh, I could imagine.
So I started a consultancy business, and now I'm doing, split. And now I'm managing my time. Better, and managing the ministry at the church and managing my business as well. So it's great, and getting to work with folk like Jim now and again, and in the last 7 years doing whiskey consultancy, traveling the world, been to China, just before COVID kicked off, actually.
Okay.
China.
You're doing bats or anything now?
No, I wasn't. No, I tried not to. Done some work in Singapore, Myanmar, and across Europe. So I've been really fortunate.
Yeah. And you've got the Edinburgh Whisky Academy. You're involved with those guys.
Edinburgh Whisky Academy. I love that, Mike. That's the online's doing really well, but the face-to-face teaching has started again. So I've got a couple of courses in November.
Excellent.
I think I'm going to come down something soon. I'm hoping to anyway. I was looking at the online, and Mike said he'd rather send me down to the face-to-face. So once we get past the Christmas period, maybe I'll get down.
Yeah. The online's been really good because we had this concern that it's all well and you can do all the teaching online. I can give you the facts online, and you can sit the exam. But one of the things about the face-to-face course is sitting as a group and discussing what's your favourite whiskey, and sitting in front of the fire and talking about this distillery and that distillery and where I used to work and all these stories. And the concern was you're just not going to get that online. But what Kirsty came up with was, as well as tutors, as well as doing tutorials online, once a week we do what's called a drop-in dram. So you have all the students come on. What dram have you got? A bit like you guys, what's in your glass tonight? And we just talk around that for an hour and a half. And that's been fantastic. But it really doesn't beat the face-to-face. Face-to-face teaching.
We know ourselves with trying to set up the Highland Whisky Academy that we put it off, and I think we're pretty determined that March this next year is going to be the first. And it would be great to maybe dabble into not just whiskey, but maybe have a wee rum chat and talk about that as well. If Vic is one of our guests, so if we can squeeze in maybe an hour or with Jim, that would be excellent. So we're looking at, we're just waiting on one distillery to come back to us and say yes, we can do it, and then we'll get it.
Some kind of discussion about sherry is going to be in there. So rum's an obvious thing to have in there as well. Really.
Yeah.
So when did you start with whiskey then? What got you into the whiskey at the beginning, before the minister?
Well, I went to university, didn't like it, hated it, left early, came back to the local area, started working. Was married young, started working for my wife's father in his local business, and then after a few years, myself and my father-in-law came to the joint decision that I should pursue my career elsewhere.
Okay.
So I that's when I started. I got a job with Diageo at Roselle Maltings, working in the laboratory.
Oh wow!
And I was doing my Open University degree, maths degree at the time, because I wanted to become a maths teacher. So working in the labs, I finished my maths degree. I was just about to apply for teacher trainer college in Aberdeen, and I got offered a trainee manager's job with Diageo. So it was like, am I going to go back to university for a year and get no money, or am I going to become a trainee manager and get 50% pay rise with another pay rise in a year?
And get whiskey.
And get whiskey. But I didn't like whiskey at the time.
Okay.
But I went on the training scheme, and the rest is history. But on the training scheme, I was being trained up by one of the really good managers in Diageo at the time. I won't give you his name because of the story I'm going to tell. So I'm sitting in his office on a Friday afternoon at 2:00, and he says, "Right, come on, Vic, we're going to go and have a wee wander around the warehouse." Now, back in the day, that was we're going away for a dram. So I went into a warehouse, went right up to the back, where he had his sherry cask, and he had all the sampling equipment, and he had the glasses and everything. So he sampled the 30-year-old sherry cask, put it into the glasses, and said, "There you are." And I said, "Look, I don't drink whiskey." And it was, if you're going to be an effing whiskey manager, you need to effing drink whiskey. So okay, so I'll try it just to keep you happy. Oh my goodness, it was a life-changing moment.
Yeah.
Because it was absolutely stunning. I'd never tasted anything like it in my life. You know, I was a kind of steal the grouse, steal the bells kind of boy when I was younger. And this stuff was just amazing.
Yeah.
And that's when I got the taste for whiskey. And very fortunate to do that year's training with Diageo. You know, the best training you can get in the industry and renowned training. And then moved into whiskey management after that. So I kind of fell into the job, Russell. It wasn't what I wanted to do. But as soon as
you must have met so many people that say the same thing. The amount of people that actually fell into it, or had a lucky break, or somebody broke their leg and I got their job, and you know it's that. It's funny how that kind of works out. It was Stuart Buchanan was saying the reason he landed up in Tober and Mull was because they were heading there on holiday, and they got a phone call to say that their house had been broken into and I completely trashed. And his mother decided they weren't going back; they just stayed on Mull. So he then got a job at the mill at the distillery at Tobermory, and the guy whose job he replaced accidentally tipped a whole load of new wash into the harbour. So he was kind of shoved aside, and Stuart got his job. And look at him now, you know. You think, but if those two things hadn't happened, if somebody hadn't burgled his mother's house, they would have never been on Mull in the first place, you know.
Yeah,
so it's incredible.
Because out of all the gin tastings that I've done, or whiskey tastings, or whatever, probably the most remote and weird one I've had was at Glass Village Town Hall. And you never expect somebody to come up to you after doing a tasting like that, saying, I've got some rum and I'm thinking of selling and starting up a rum company. Would you be interested in that? And obviously that's when I first met Jim. And that was 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And then it just kind of went silent. I thought, yeah, give us a shout when you're ready to go. We'll probably stock. And then about a year later, a kind of email and a phone call came out of the blue. It was like, "Look, do you remember me from Glass Hall?" Vaguely, yeah, I kind of think I do. Yeah, well, that rum I was talking to. Oh, yeah, okay, I remember that, because it's a bizarre. Because I was thinking, kind of slow gin, kind of. I've got some rum and I'm making it in the kitchen, kind of scenario. But here we are, kind of 5 years later, and it's it's one of the best Scottish rums we've got. So it's weird how these little things just kind of all add up.
The other question I was hoping to ask is on a more personal level. How did you end up in Trinidad, Jim?
So I'm not from Scotland, obviously, with my dulcet accent, you know. But I've had pretty much my whole adult life in Aberdeenshire, or Aberdeenshire. But my wife and I actually met in Johannesburg in the late 90s, when Johannesburg was the murder capital of the world. So, you know, a really romantic setting. So I really pick it, you know. But we'd always thought about going abroad again, mainly just to experience another culture and sort of absorb that. And an opportunity came. I've always worked or tried to work in small sort of UK businesses, and Centrica at the time, so when the Oil and Gas Board, which was a nationalised organisation, when that split, they set up the BG Group, as we know, that's sort of in Aberdeen, that did all the gas exploration, and then Centrica was the bills and so on. Well, Centrica then decided to go full circle and wanted a drilling department, and they were busy in the southern North Sea, but they had acreage in Trinidad that they needed to, like most things in the oil field, if you don't exercise your rights on this land after a number of years, you lose that.
Yeah.
So they had to get on and do something out in the Caribbean. So a load of people, I think we were the only ones who said yes, to be fair. I mean, we lived abroad, and when we went on our look-see visit, then the manager and his wife, they took us out for dinner and this, that, and the other, and they were a bit nervous. They said, oh, you guys have come out here. And, oh, no, we met in Johannesburg. And they went, oh, and like visibly relaxed, because they were worried that some very nervous, quite comfortable oil field couple was going to come out and really struggle. But yeah, we had a great time out there. So yeah, it was, even when I was in the service companies, we'd land on the rigs, and you'd have an Italian crew who spoke hardly any English, and I'd be in the middle of Sicily. And for me, it was great, because you were just learning about the culture and learning different people. And it's funny, like even with the accents and everything else, everybody's got the same worries across the planet, and everyone's got the same things they're trying to deal with. Yeah. It's just a different time zone or a different locality. So yeah, so we went to Trinidad, and we were there for 4.5 years in the end. And my kids pretty much had their formative primary school years there. But it was just our thing to really show them a different part of the world, and if the right opportunity came up, and Trinidad was it. So it was,
yeah. What about the rugby coaching? Where did that kind of come from then? The rugby background?
My rugby background is where I grew up. I went to a local comprehensive school, but it had 1,850 kids in it. So yeah. the catchment area for the school was half of northwest Devon and into Cornwall. So we played football, but that's the thing that you did during lunchtime. But the school, we had 5 school rugby pitches, and the local town team. You guys, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Graham Dorr was at one stage the Bath captain. But okay. he went to our school,
Oh right.
Really stout farmer lad,
Yes,
and just made of iron. But where we grew up, it's like I've said before, it's not dissimilar to Cabrat, but you've just got more old woodland and a lot more rivers through it. But rugby is very strong. It's a very traditional game from where we are, and it was like surfing, or you play football, but you play rugby as much.
Yeah.
And so when I went out to the Caribbean, there wasn't any organized sport for really young kids. So me and my mate, Pat was involved a bit, my business partner in Trinidad, but we set up the first sort of primary school up to secondary school kids club in Trinidad.
Wow.
Just really to help out, kick out, because there is quite a strong rugby thing in Trinidad as well. Guyana is actually the biggest rugby playing. Their 2 big sports are rugby and squash, really.
Yeah.
But in Trinidad, it was athletics, a bit of football, but rugby was up there. So yeah.
It was funny you mentioned squash as Guyana. How long ago now? 7 years ago, when the Commonwealth Games were in Glasgow, I volunteered to be a Clydesider.
Oh, right.
The job I got was as a driver to the dignitaries, which I really no idea what was happening. But I didn't get allocated them because I could only go down for the fortnight. And I thought, when I went to the first day, I thought, oh damn, I've missed out. I didn't get allocated a specific dignitary. But in the end, it was probably the best thing that happened, because I became a kind of stand-in. So obviously everybody needed a day off. So when they had their days off, I was just given a job to do to take their person around. So I was busy every day. Had I actually been allocated one person and they didn't need me, I'd have had nothing to do, maybe for days on end. And there were some people who got no work to do because their dignitary decided to do their own thing. So never got anything to do. So my very first job was actually to go to the squash courts is it Scottstown or Scottsfield in Glasgow? I can't remember. but it was to go down there to pick up the Guyanan representatives and take them back to the hotel. They were wonderful people.
Yeah.
They wanted to ask me all about dementia care and everything like that because they didn't do any of that on the island. I was like, I'm just a nurse, never just a nurse. I was like, I don't run the health service here. I can't tell you, but they wanted to know the ins and out of the whole thing because they were like, oh yeah, we need to set these services up. And so, yeah, it's fantastic to meet people from across the globe like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the other thing about the oil business where, you know, I'm still in touch, and that's actually, I'm hoping to broker a deal with to send a combined package of Northeast spirits and beer back to Trinidad, and that's through links that we've made over the last 5 to 6 years. But also because of the oil field, a mate of mine, he set up his own logistics and sort of distribution business in New Zealand. So we actually are hoping to ship, again, similar, but spirits to New Zealand based on the relationships that I've met in the oil field. But again, he's sort of a sports playing guy, and, you know, high premium spirits in Christchurch, Auckland area, as well as certain parts of New Zealand, as well as looking into sort of, Byron Bay in Australia. So there's all these things that are happening, mainly because, like Vic said, about and staying with the right people or people you've gelled with who've got a similar outlook.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, then the rugby coaching now, I'm still coaching at Huntley. So
very good. Yeah.
You know, so we shites. I mean, amazing. I don't
We've
actually.
almost made the watershed.
It's basically the P67 still. I'm still keeping an eye on them, but really it's S1s, S2s now, and S3s. But because of rugby is not supported and has been woefully supported sadly in Scotland, but the rest of the UK, but more so here. It's really down to the parents and these small clubs, but also because people are getting dragged down to the Central Belt and other places, the clubs are now struggling. So we're combining forces with Murray, so the Elgin team, as well as Banff now as well, just to field the team or a team to compete in the Caledonian League.
Yeah.
So a lot of combined work there, just making sure we've got people to actually field. So.
You don't like to take a day off, do you? By the sound of things.
No, not much.
8 days off are boring.
Just had a week off.
You're not getting away with that. You're not getting away with that. My God.
Not that I'm jealous or anything, Jim. No.
2 years after the fact, is like use these flights or they're gone sort of thing.
Yeah, I've got a few of them.
It is.
Australia, you can't complain, man.
What?
You're off to Australia next year. You can't complain.
Oh, nice.
Well, I'm hoping. So I've got a gig in Australia. I'm doing a wedding.
Oh, wow.
My son.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant.
So hopefully we're going to get over there in April to do his wedding. That'll be great. My wife reckons I won't be able to do it because I'll end up a blubbering wreck. But I'm sure.
You're going to do the service. I assume you haven't married any of your other children yet. Then is this the first one?
No, not yet.
Wow.
I've done a few weddings, but not anybody in the family yet. So
what an incredible thing to do! Wow.
Oh, it'll be great. I mean, we're not sure of the legalities there, but we'll get
marrying your own son. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't roll off the tongue, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, I think there's a law against that, isn't it?
When you talk about it, make sure you get the wording right.
Yeah, that's like I'm Nathan Burghead, so yeah, we'll get that right. So what he's wanting me to do is, as well as doing the wedding, he wants a little nosing and tasting. You know, he wants everyone.
Oh my God!
And,
for his money.
He wants me to take out a couple of bottles of whiskey, one that represents him, and one that represents Kim, his future wife. So I've got Jamie's bottle already.
Okay.
He likes Glenmurray
Nice.
and he likes Chardonnay. So I've got a couple of these Chardonnay casks, the 2003. So I think they're 16 years old. So I've got to use this whiskey to describe my son. So that'll be interesting. But I've got to buy another bottle for Kim. And Kim is she's a lovely girl, but she's a weirdo. I mean, she's
Okay.
she's a forensic crime scene officer,
Wow.
and loves it, and likes cemeteries and likes looking at dead people. And
Got the perfect dram for you.
what's that?
It's got to be a Ben Nevis, surely.
A Ben Nevis?
Has
Well,
to be a Ben Nevis. A lovely girl, but a weirdo. That has to be.
well, that's yeah. Well, that's I'd have to kind of tone down that hard line, I think, a little bit.
I think that's not in the ceremony, then, is it? That's not.
Yeah, that's right. So that's going to be fun. So hopefully, yeah, you're right, Jim. Hopefully, I'll be doing a little bit of traveling next year. Hopefully, going out to the States as well, Mike, with the Whiskey Academy. So.
Oh, brilliant.
That sounds brilliant.
Because that just kind of kick-started, we went to China to do a course in November 2019.
Fabulous.
And it was starting to build. And then, well, everything just finished in March 2020, didn't it? So,
Yeah.
So looking forward to doing that. But yeah, looking forward to doing the Highland Academy as well. I do like a bit of teaching. So
Yeah. Because I was actually hoping to do that.
We've been talking about it for years. What started off as a long weekend, I thought kind of what would be a weekend kind of course. Having been in a couple of academies and courses myself, I thought, why can't we do this? And it's something we don't have in the Northeast. Northeast is there's a lot of great spirits coming up. We have the whiskies. We've got a plethora of gins coming up now, and now we've got rum. We've got a few rums on the go as well. And it's like, I think I was doing a bit of research. Aberdeen Dicey Airport is the busiest airport in the world for whiskey tourism, but nobody stays in Aberdeen for it. They're straight on the N86 out to Speyside.
yeah,
They don't stay here, and they're bypassing such quality distilleries. So the aim of the academy is to keep people in Aberdeenshire.
But it's incredible. I mean, Vic and Jim will be the same. Where we stay, the farm shop, we use farm shops for meat, for veg, for milk, for everything. Hardly ever go to supermarket apart from to buy things like soap and toiletries and stuff like that. The produce that's in this area is incredible. I'm 10 minutes away from getting some fantastic seafood, lobsters, scallops, any kind of fish that I'd want, fresh off the harbour. And we just don't. Aberdeenshire's not recognised for that. People think seafood. They think the West Coast, Isle of Skye. Nobody thinks Macduff, Banff, all these kind of places. But it's absolutely full of it up there. So to actually get people,
the oil has kind of, people think Aberdeen, they think oil.
Yeah.
And that's it. And they think the prices for so long, the prices of staying in Aberdeen have been ridiculous because it's all been bought out by oil companies. Recently, we've seen that change because the money's not there anymore, and the prices are coming down. More visitors are coming in because they can afford to, and hopefully that's start. So we have to look elsewhere. The cruise ships are coming in the next few years. Obviously, that's been delayed into Cove. But yeah, I really think there's an opportunity.
We might need to rebuild that harbour.
Yeah.
I think it's been undermined, but hey ho.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got some great distilleries that you can take folk to round the Ure area. Aberdeen,
Glengarry, Knockdhu,
that's it.
Glendronach.
That's it. And of course, it's the Highland region when we're talking about whiskey. Hence the Highland Whisky Academy. So,
and that's what I thought long and hard about it, and I thought, why can't we be the Highland? We're not in the Highlands, but as a whiskey region, yes, it is Highland.
You're in the whiskey. You're in the Highland region, so why not?
And of course, what falls into that is Loch Nagar. So at one point we might get down to Loch Nagar.
Well, Lochnagar's a great site. I love it there. Yeah.
I think for what we want to do currently, it's too far for
probably.
But that's. Did they still do that? Your Diageo training, is that still all at Lochnagar?
It was still ongoing. I used to go down there and do a little bit of teaching when some of the other guys. I wasn't part of the team, but I would cover now and again.
Yeah.
And that was a great course to get on if you could. If you got to go on the deluxe one, that was the one where they flew you from Lochnagar in a helicopter over to Islay to cut your peat, and then you went back. But I was never in the upper echelons to get to go on that course. But
awesome.
I think it's still done there. Yeah.
So sorry, we're kind of moving away from rum a little bit here, but just to kind of bring it back in, we're up to 40 minutes over time. We never actually planned for an hour. We gauge an hour.
We never stick to an hour. But we've only stuck to an hour once, and that was Billy Walker because we were told to.
All right.
That's another story.
We fluked that.
I think, having said that, I think Billy would have stayed on. He didn't tell us, but he would have stayed on. I think other people round about Billy would have. They were looking after him, told us to keep it an hour.
But absolute pleasure.
Fantastic.
It's been so much good fun and learning a little bit more for the guys who are watching about not just Outlaw Rum, but I think rum in general. I think we've learned a lot more.
When I met Jim at the Hearst, we stopped and chatted for a while. And unfortunately, I was driving, so Rachel, who hasn't had a lot of rum before, fell in love with the rum that day, and she was scooping up the samples. And we came away with the bottle. I just thought that day, this is going to be such a great Blether. So I knew it would be fantastic. Great guy, Jim. Yeah.
No, thank you for inviting.
Jim, Vic, thank you very much for giving up your time. And
lovely to meet you. Yeah, fantastic.
Pleasure. Guys, if you want to join us again, you can join Jim and I, certainly Russell and Vic. The invitation is open to join us at the tasting.
David Muir, one of our good friends in the shop, who tends to pick up on all the whiskey that I say that he's seen by. He's clearly going to do the tasting night, so we might have another rum convert as well. So he's looking forward to the tasting night. So he's clearly going to be buying a ticket for that. So fantastic, good stuff, David.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you very much, and thank you guys for watching. If you're watching pre-recorded, check out the links and jump on the Outlaw Rum. You can buy it direct from Jim or from the Whisky Shop in Inverurie. And I think we mentioned a couple other shops as well. But we may
well have done, yeah. Quick mention for next week, just before we go offline, guys. So next week we've got Kenny McDonald from Dramore, another one of our favourite independent bottlings. And Kenny's a great guy, always up for a fantastic chat. So please tune in next week and hear what Kenny's got to say.
Vic, Jim, thanks very much. Russell,
see you later.
We'll see you on Monday when you're back from holiday.
We're back from holidays, yeah.
For the last 2 weeks, gallivanting around the country. So.
I've been to Sky and all sorts, yeah. It's been good.
All right, thanks, guys.
Yes.
Jim, Vic, if you want to stay back, we'll just say cheerio personally after the chat. And,
great.
Thanks, guys.
Good night to everybody else. Good night, guys. See you next week. See you next Thursday.